Okay, we're going to start. If everyone can take their seats, Andreas is going to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Andreas Steffen. I'm a professor with the University of Applied Sciences, Rapperswil in Switzerland. And my talk is on practically applying TCG's Trusted Network Connect protocol suite in Android BYOD security. I also am going to do a live demo, and I'm showing how all these protocols, how they fit together in order to do a practical application. You might ask yourself, where the heck is Rapperswil? Yeah. So if you know the difference between Sweden and Switzerland, then you certainly know the Matterhorn, Zermatt, and you probably know Zurich, where all the bankers are. And Rapperswil is right on Lake Zurich, on the upper end of Lake Zurich, about 40 kilometers, or what is it, about 30 miles, 85 miles from Zurich. And people say it's the most beautiful campus in Switzerland, right on Lake Zurich. This is my office.
Oh, that's your boat?
No, this is not my boat. Okay, so...
Would you like a visiting person?
Yeah, anytime. Just apply, yeah. Okay, so we are a rather small university, so as you see from the fact. So there's something about our background. Then I'm also head of the Institute of Internet Technologies and Applications, and our main research is on secure network protocols. This is why I wanted to start with my background. So our main project is StrongSwarm. StrongSwarm is an open source VPN solution. It initially started out as a Linux solution. You can use it on the Linux desktop, but very few people are using Linux as the desktop, just some nerds. Much more interesting is using StrongSwarm as a VPN gateway. And StrongSwarm implements the IPsec protocol, so it's a layer 3 VPN. And for example, this is the example of our university. So we have a Cisco VPN gateway, but as an alternative, we also have, for the last 2 years, we also had the StrongSwarm infrastructure. You can have StrongSwarm in a high availability setup with 2 redundant servers with hot standby, so comparable to a Cisco VPN access concentrator. And this is not only used by universities, but by most mobile communications equipment manufacturers. We know Nokia Siemens networks are using this in their security gateways with up to 64,000 concurrent tunnels. Also, Alcatel-Lucent is using them in LTE security gateways. On the client side, Ubiquisys, which is a UK company, recently bought by Cisco. They're using StrongSwarm in their femtocells, and also Ericsson are using StrongSwarm in femtocells and I think in security gateways. So just about, yeah.
Would you like questions as we go, or just kind of hold?
You just can ask questions, yeah.
So, is this, when you say that many concurrent tunnels, is this all software based, or is there a hardware module in there that's
they have an Octane processor which I think has 16 ARP cores, and I think they have some Diffie-Hellman acceleration because with the I protocol, and I don't know actually the throughput, but the worst case scenario is if the server is going down during the busy hour, then all people at home are reconnecting, and they want to set up 64,000 tunnels. And we can do that in a couple of minutes. So, yeah. So this StrongSwarm is used in many hardware, and this is our main business model, doing add-on development for hardware vendors. Plus, we are also licensing StrongSwarm as closed source under a closed source license to some security companies which are using them in their security equipment, like Seconnect, for example, in Germany, in the Sina box. So, yeah, you're here from Microsoft. So we also support the Windows 7 and 8 HL VPN client, which we are very thankful because it really gave IKE version 2 a big push when Microsoft, and it was not 7 years ago, in 2007 we were here in Orlando at one of the IKE V2 operability workshops. And the year after that in San Antonio there were 2 teams from Microsoft, one from Redmond, one from Bangalore, and they tested an IKE V2 implementation. They didn't disclose what. We thought it would be a security, it would be a service pack for Windows Vista, and it actually was. It was Windows 7, which probably was one big service pack, yeah. And we know from, at least from the testers in Redmond, that they tested their client for at least a year with StrongSwarm. So it's extremely good interoperability with Microsoft. And it's really a nice client, I must say. Okay. Yeah, what I want to talk about the third client is we recently introduced it about a year ago because many people have Android-based smartphones. Actually, in Switzerland, most have iPhones. We still don't have a client for the iPhone, but it's due to Apple because they don't want to disclose the internal VPN interface. And I want to talk about this application, StrongSwarm, the VPN client, and on top of that, actually Trusted Network Connect application. So we see it at our university. VPN is about remote access, and traditionally what you are doing is user authentication based on some kind of AAA server. It can be an open source server, or actually what we are doing at the university, we are connected to the Active Directory, where all the student and staff accounts are kept, maintained. So login here is using MS Version 2, connecting authentication against the Active Directory. But you are not sure in what state of health the clients have. And I think there's a lot of hype about BYOD. I'll just repeat some point. What are probable security issues? Users do not protect access to the devices or use weak passwords or login methods. Users download and install dangerous software packages containing malware from unknown sources. Users do not regularly apply security updates to the installed software packages and operating system. Users run server applications, potentially giving third parties access to the corporate network and or sensitive data. And malware might embed itself into the operating system, modifying system commands and library. We had an excellent talk this afternoon from Microsoft. Actually, there's a lot of activity with Windows 8, trusted boot and secure boot. And actually, we try at least to cover some of these aspects with our Android implementation. So this is the classical situation. We have a device. It might be a smartphone, it might be a tablet. They want to connect to the corporate network, and usually with network access control, you have a network access control server, which is a policy. You also had an excellent talk, so I can base on that. It's a policy decision point, and then you here at the as a gatekeeper here, you have a policy enforcement point, which on layer 3 can be a VPN gateway on layer 4, and on layer 2 it's usually an access point. And what the network access control server is doing, it's requesting attributes, doing some measurement, requesting some measurements on the device, and what you get back are measurement attributes. And depending on the result, on the statement of health, you either allow the client into the corporate network, or if it's extremely bad, for example, if you detect open server ports, then you can block the device, which just means that the VPN negotiation fails, you don't establish a tunnel. Or if you see that, for example, you need security updates, then you can divert the client into an isolation or remediation network. So this is the classical network access control situation. I think network access control is a very old topic. I think one of the first was Cisco with NAC, Microsoft with network access protection, which I think they introduced with Vista. But what's new is that there are now standards. And this is where I became interested when I saw in 2010, thanks of course to Steve, that the TCG standards were also accepted as internet standards, as RFCs. So this is a very well-known diagram. It shows the TCG's Trusted Network Connect architecture. And up to 2010, StrongSwarm was active in this business. It actually acted as a network access requester, as a layer 3 VPN client, or as a policy enforcement point. And what we started to add about 3 years ago was TNC client functionality in our VPN client, and also TNC server functionality, which actually is a part of the policy decision point. You can run now StrongSwarm as a standalone policy decision point, or you can collocate it together with the VPN gateway. This is the usual setup. And then, of course, we also implemented, a policy decision point. We also implemented a couple of integrity measurement collectors. So we have an operating system, IMC, which measures some operation system parameters. We have a port scanner. We have a SWIT collector, which collects software identification tags. And we also have a remote attestation IMC. And of course, the problem is if you have a rootkit or a bootkit, then you have the problem of the lying endpoint. And this is where the TPM comes into play. We also support, not under Android, because the Android platforms right now don't have a TPM usually. So we can't do remote attestation on the Android platform, but we can do it on the Linux platform. I had a talk about this a year ago in San Diego at LinuxCon, the largest US open source conference, on how to do remote attestation on the Linux using the Linux integrity measurement architecture. So you can measure about 1,500 files and transmit the measurements in about 45 seconds from the access requester to the PDP. So it's quite feasible. And using as a transport, just using EAP-based transport. So it can be done. So this was a talk last year. So unfortunately, we can't do that with Android. Here we didn't implement this TCG standard because it thought it was too complicated using an XML-based interface. We're using directly the TCG software stack, or actually the IBM's Trousers implementation. So this is the setup. And where I became interested was when the IFM, the IF measurement protocol, which allows to exchange attribute between integrity measurement collectors and integrity measurement verifiers, when this protocol became an RFC in 2010. Also the exchange of batches between TNC client and TNC server using the IFT and CCS 2.0 protocol, which also became an RFC. And now this year we saw that the IFT for TLS protocol, also thanks to Steve, became an RFC, and I hope at the end of this year the E-based transport protocol, which actually StrongSwarm is using with IKE version 2, will also become an RFC. So we have a lot of standards. I don't want to go into much technical detail, just to give an impression what these protocols are doing. This is just an excerpt from our log, from the StrongSwarm log. So on the lowest layer, on the transport layer, you just have an exchange of EAP packets which are transported over IPv2, and they are protected by tunnel TLS, so they are encrypted. Then on the next higher layer, it's the TNC client-server protocol. You see an exchange of batches. Here is a client data batch between the TNC client and the TNC server. And then the next higher layer, you see the message exchange between an integrity measurement collector and an integrity measurement verifier, where you see here that this PATNC message, it carries 3 standard IETF attributes. So it's product information, string version, and some proprietary. This is a big advantage of these protocols. You can use as a vendor, you can use your own namespace. And we saw here what we need is a hardware ID, which hopefully can be implemented using the TPM in the future. So currently we are using, I think, the DBus ID in Linux and the Android ID on the Android platform, which we need in order to identify the device. So currently it's not a trusted device ID, but it could be made into a trusted ID. And here actually what the IMV is getting, it says operating system is Android from when the Google operating system version is 4.2.1, and this is the device ID, this is the unique Android ID. So more or less what's happening here. Some information you might be interested in who is using the Android VPN application. This is from our Google developers, the statistics from our Google developers account. On first place is the United States, and second place, it's very surprising, is China. And this mirrors our experience with the Linux downloads. More than 1/3 of our downloads are coming from China. So there are a lot of users using VPNs in China. And then I think third is Germany. And not surprisingly, on fifth place is Switzerland. This is mostly my students. In order to access the campus network. So it's about 6,000 active installations. It's not like OpenVPN with several 10,000s, but it's still. Okay, just go on with the demo. Yeah, so at the beginning we had our standard VPN client, just an IPv2 client. You see you can define a number of profiles. You can connect to my home network, to my university network. And what we added about half a year ago was integrating TNC functionality into our client. And the client which you can download from the Google Play Store includes as an option, you must activate it as a user, and you get a warning that you might lose some privacy, because in a BYOD situation you have to give the right to the network that it can do some measurements, and they can't read your private data. Even in print. No, it's surprising because the VPN client doesn't run as root. It's just a normal application, but all the information that we need we can get. We can use a port scan. We can see the system binaries and libraries, but we can't see user data because they are stored in another, running under another user ID. So this is an advantage. It's not rooted. Okay, so this is the normal situation. If everything okay, then you get connected, you get full access to the corporate or campus network. And what we add, and here you see its configuration is quite easy. It's similar to Microsoft's clients. You just define the VPN gateway, then you use usually user passwords with an EP method, and then you just connect. You can have to design a CA, certification authority, and then you connect to the gateway. So, and what I want to show you as a live demo is actually can you do now some measurements on the Android platform. And we assume now that the user has downloaded has activated, which is very dangerous, has activated this flag. So it allows download from unknown sources. And you get a warning if you activate that, because by drive-by infection with vulnerabilities in the browser, you can actually replace some of your apps can be replaced by apps which contain malware. So we can detect that. And what the user also does, downloads a web server. There are a lot of apps, hundreds of applications which run server on clients. DNS servers, SSH servers, all kinds of servers, mail servers. So we also can detect whether this app has been installed and whether it's running. So I know I'm switching to the...
Quick question.
Yeah?
On that screen, there's an option for downloading dangerous stuff. Is that like a standard screen?
This is a standard Android setting. If you go into the settings, next one. This one, yeah. This is in the settings, in the security settings. You have per default it's not activated.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is a flag which shouldn't be set. Yeah. For example, in the beginning, when the StrongSwarm VPN client wasn't in Google Play Store yet, because it needs some effort to get it there, then developers sent it me per email, and they stored it locally and then installed it. So this would not be allowed with. Then I had to activate this flag, because otherwise you can't install it. So what I have here is my personal phone, and I just switch it on here. So you have the display here, and so I start here now the StrongSwarm VPN client up. Probably I just started from new. I made a demo during the break. Oh, still did. Oh, I'm still connected. That's the problem. Okay. So when I'm connecting, actually the server is at home in Switzerland, so there is some delay. Yeah, and you see now if you count that with the other one, it's connected, but I'm not fully connected to the network, but I'm diverted into an isolation network. So because the health measurements have shown that something is not okay, and it says assessment is restricted. And yeah, I can now, as a user, I can now check the remediation instructions, which is also a standard ITF and TCG attribute. So in the standard remediation instructions, which we are using, you see now we have, here it says blacklisted software packages. And if I click on this, this was the wrong. You see, it says it's this app which it does, it's not tolerated, it's this web server. So you have to remove it in order to connect fully to the network. And the other thing is this flag, which says unknown software, do not allowed. Yeah. So this flag, I have to remove that flag. Yeah, Steve?
Have you looked into automated remediation so that you could click a setting and when you get these remediation instructions, they would just automatically be done?
Yeah, we are a little wary of this proactive measurement. Yeah, it probably could be done. I don't know whether, if it's running under this user ID, whether I can set this flag or not. We haven't tried it. But usually our policy is just to tell the user not to enforce it, but probably in a corporate environment you would want to enforce it, yeah.
It would,
yeah.
And even in a non-corporate environment, it might be nice to have a button that says,
yeah,
do that.
Yeah.
Whatever, because I don't know how to change that. Well, actually, I do, but
yeah, probably, yeah, of course, yeah.
Like, yes, okay.
Yeah, it could be, we could have a look into it, yeah. So. And then, of course, what I can do now, go back, it's my time, just disconnect. And I see I have here on this, here is this web server. I can start it now. Start server. So it's opening a port on 8088. It's listening on that port. So everyone can access it. But it's not so severe if you don't allow split tunneling. And now if I repeat the login, just here, just reconnect again. Now I say failed to establish VPN, security assessment failed. If I click on the remediation instruction, I see open server ports, and the port can says the TCP port 8088 is open. And I've been using this application for a couple of months now, and very often I'm surprised that it can connect. And sometimes it's Skype, which is listening to some open ports or some other applications. Actually, this mobile, it opens about 6 ports, which I had to allow in order to display the Android screen here on my laptop. So, okay, that's what we can do. And just close this. Just continue with my presentation. So, yeah, this is what I've shown you. Yeah, and another tool which we created, it was a bachelor thesis. It was finished a couple of months ago. I showed it in Dublin. I think it was about 2 days old. And I hacked it for about 2 days in order to make it really working. So what you see now is actually usually you have a policy decision point and you have a policy manager. I think also Microsoft has 2 functionalities. There's in network access protection, where you can define some corporate policies. What is going to be measured? And interesting that you're going to measure based on past client history. So probably users who often download stuff from the internet, probably you're going to do more frequent measurements than people which behave properly. So this is what we try to do this. It's really a prototype. So I see now, this is the policy, and I see we have a number of devices. I can show this in live. This is our server in Switzerland, here on the web. So we see after devices view, and here this was the Google Nexus Prime client. You see here, and I have here the device report. And see that the last time I accessed it is actually Swiss time. It's already 11 p.m. So the decision was blocked because the server was running. And then I see the enforcement which I have running. So usually what I'm testing is unknown source flag. I check the open TCP ports. Once in a week, I think, I measure the system bin and system lib library, things like that. So you can do SHA-1 or SHA-256 measurements on the Android phone. And we also request a list of installed user packages. Steve?
What database do you use to store this historical information?
Yeah, currently it's SQLite. I think we also support MySQL. It could also be, we could also support any relation database. We just would have to write the driver. It's probably a couple of days' work.
So if I wanted to mine that database, I could submit my own SQL queries.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So I also have a command line tool, and sometimes I'm doing yeah, because it's better this version. Sometimes it doesn't work, but yeah. So you see here the whole history. I think the last 50 connections, and you see what happened. So you see here that port 8088 was open. Then there were 26 user packages, and one of them was blacklisted. So it's quite little historical information. Probably the US government would want much more. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, why does it list the application, the offending application itself?
Yeah, we could that, yeah.
Or is that a privacy concern?
We didn't do it just in order to keep the data small, but as we had some discussion with Steve, to keep, every time you connect which user packages, so if 1 year ago you had this dangerous package, then you said it might have become infected, things like that. It's easy because the information is available, but we don't store it in a database currently. Yeah. You see, for example, here in the policy, in the UDP policy, no, it's not used. It's a TCP, I think it's TCP policy. Yeah, I see. In order to do this demo, I had to whitelist ports, TCP ports 1234, 12345, 2121, and 88. This tool requires all these ports. So I was surprised in doubling because it failed, and so it's using these ports. So this is just a proof of concept how you can implement the policy manager. And make decisions. You can define policies. You can define enforcements. What about my time? Yeah, I think I'm going forward with my where is it? Yeah.
So is this IPv6 compatible, capable?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, at home, I'm surprised it connects with IPv6 because I have an IPv6 environment. Yeah. Yeah. So this is some things we can measure. And these are, many of them are based on IETF standard attributes. So it is not the case with Android or with Linux that we have some factory default password. We could measure that. It is an interesting forwarding enabled, which would allow some external party to connect into the corporate network. With forwarding enabled, we can detect that with Linux. Then we can define a TCP port policy, UDP port policy, and we can whitelist or blacklist some ports. Then we can get a list of installed packages. For example, we're doing this with Linux. When connecting, I think every hour we just download all security updates from Ubuntu and from Debian and see which Linux packages require a security update, and then we can enforce that. We say, okay, you have to download the latest kernel. This unknown sources flag. This is where I was working. It's software type ID and inventory, which I can do a demo right now on the Windows if you're here. It's especially for you, Atul. And we can do file reference measurements. Yeah, because it's very difficult to get the SHA-1 hashes off of an Android application. So I just take a clean device and just give me measure all libraries, and I store it in a database as a reference. So I can measure the same thing with Linux, and to measure directories, the thing which can be done. Yeah. And sweet tags. There is one sweet tags on my Windows 8. So this is the Microsoft Windows 8 Pro sweet tag. Yeah. And what you see here, this is the endpoint compliance profile, where you can do measurements. And this is a lightweight PTTLS or IFT for TLS client, which is doesn't have anything to do with the StrongSwarm VPN client. So it's really a PTTLS client. So I'm calling it here on the Windows. I'm using Sigwin, so for a quick port from Linux to so it's running on the Windows 8. And I hope it works. Does a measurement. Yeah, it takes some time. Yeah. And what it says now, where is it? Yeah, here you see. It goes to the program data directory, and it does a search of the whole directory looking for SWIT tags. Unfortunately, there is only one. I haven't in, I think the latest Office package also, but I'm still using Windows Office 2010, I think, which doesn't have a tag. Yeah. And you see it now on our policy manager in our database. If I'm going now to devices, to my Windows 8 client, you see there's only one measurement, it's SWIT tag ID inventory, and the latest measurement here, it shows one SWIT tag was detected and was transported using PATNC attributes.
So you don't store it in the database yet? The content of the SWIT tag?
Yeah, it's actually a prepare, you see. The preparation is already here. I have here a list of reg IDs, and I have a list of tags. So I constructed some Debian tags, and this is the true Microsoft Windows tag, so it's work under development. It isn't automatically stored in a database yet, but it could be done easily. So this is more or less what's possible with using standards, TCG standards, IETF standards. And I hope you got an impression what can be done with these protocols.
I have a question that's a little bit outside the box on it.
Yeah.
So how much of this would work on either Android, let's just stick with Android right now,
Yeah.
where I could query the information as aggregated now without the forcing of trusted network access. So can I just query on a web-based request of the endpoint device, tell me about your state, without actually forming the VPN?
Yeah, this is actually what this client does on the Windows.
All right.
So it's just a client which, we discussed it today. It could be either, because the IFT for TLS protocol says either the client makes a connection to the policy decision point. Periodically, it could running, I don't know whether there's such a thing as a cron job under Android, or what's also possible that the server is querying the PTS client, which is possible with a client certificate. So the policy decision point could, for example, query every hour, or actually there's this subscription model with the SWIT tags. So if something changes, if a new package is installed, then the client will automatically report this change to the policy decision point. So, and this, you don't need any access. It's just
right. So what will be really interesting is the node service we're showing here as an online identity service. It's doing PCR data collection on the Windows platform.
Yeah.
But it would be trivial in the web APIs that are already up for Node to add this type of a query on Android.
Yeah.
And you have a health statement attached to the trust score of an Android device. And if it can improve the quality of the actual hardware identity, it's better. We can reach the SIM module through TMobile. So you can have a T-Mobile-based SIM device identity, and this would give you at best efforts at device integrity without assurance that device integrity is alive.
Yeah. So with using this PTTLS client, you could do a remote attestation. So you can I implemented this. There's also a TCG standard, this binding, PTS binding. So you can transport quite a lot of data, these PCR measurements.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't need any remote access. It's just TLS based.
So the piece we're trying to solve is a very simple one, which is no access control. We're trying to create the imagination in people that a feature appears or disappears as opposed to there's quarantine. So because I have this other app downloaded, you can't download data from the site. You see the data, but the download button
Yeah.
is away. And so you actually build the quarantine on a feature basis as opposed to an access basis. And it becomes an enormously more usable environment.
Mm-hmm.
This is fine-grained application layer access control.
Right.
A tool did a demo of it at the RSA conference.
Yeah, no, but that model, I think, from a remediation perspective, has a very interesting real-world example of you as a consumer have chosen to run this X environment, and as a result, you can't get Y.
Right.
And so then you can make the mental trade-offs of if you want Y, you have to get rid of X, and you can decide, you want the redneck to be playing that phone.
But what's wrong with that?
My daughter had to jailbreak her iPhone to get a corporate background.
Yeah.
Really?
But this can still do that. This can still,
Yeah.
This could do remote attestation.
and therefore I could.
Can do any PCO measurements, yeah.
With TPM.
With the TPM, yeah. Yeah.
It was right there, TCG/PTS.
Yeah. You see, currently I'm loading on the Windows. I've just loaded the suite IMC, and actually it was another one. I think that. But I could also load the remote attestation IMC. So if a TPM is available, it could do measurements. Of course, on the Windows, the interface would be different. Probably it's better left to Microsoft to implement that. But you never know.
Have you thought about how that attestation gets used?
Mm-hmm.
So from the back end, from the relying party perspective, what would you need to present as the outcome of the attestation that can be used for the purposes that Steven just described? Is it a standard SAML token? Is it something else? Or is that not where you have gone yet?
Well, I haven't given much thought because this endpoint compliance profile I started about 2 months ago with that, and before it was always this connect, just remote access. But of course, you could use, for example, IFMap and block the client. Just give some command to a switch or to a policy enforcement point.
And you already support that, I think, publishing the IFMap results in your lines.
Yeah, we have an IFMap client for our policy.
It's an area for work. I think that
it could be done. Yeah, I haven't given much thought about that. It's very very helpful feedback.
we've done OpenID, we've done SAML,
Yeah.
and then the team did a JavaScript interface that's completely customized. And it turns out that writing if you want a JavaScript really flat, go away and come back, it turns out to be brilliantly simple. So somewhere in this picture is where you build this into your application level. And it depends on whether the application level is HTML, browser or an application.
Right, but the way I would like to think about this is it's currency.
Yeah.
If I have attestation as currency, and I have the right amount of currency, and the right quality of currency to then access certain things, and then it suddenly got taken away, and I don't have enough money to go access that application anymore.
Yeah.
How do you turn all of this rich data that is so platform specific into some standard currency that can be utilized across these platforms and across the internet? That would be absolutely fantastic. And you don't have the limitations that I do inherently to be able to help solve that.
By the way, I think we're looking for an interface for the configuration management database, because now the connection between the database which the IMV is using and which the policy is using, actually it's a shared database. So based on past user data, which could also be interactive if something occurs, then I change my policy or my enforcements. So I just generate a couple of work items, which are then read by the IMV, and the IMV executes the measurements. So right now it's a proprietary interface, just by using a shared database. And of course, we have been thinking about what would be a standard interface, which would be platform independent. sharing data and actually getting some results, some decision, and then enforce that. I think we need a standardized interface for that.
I would say the other piece that we've learned in our implementations and playing around with this is almost every one of the systems benefits from foreign policy event service as a generic port. And so there's always the possibility that says, I have all my proprietary policy and I say yes. And go check these other guys and see if you're on their listserv, right? And it turns out that go check these other guys makes the thing infinitely extendable. And because I can, whatever I want, build over here. And so, if the atomic clock hasn't registered after 9 p.m., then you can't do this action, whatever it is. And it turns out that tool, which allows you to talk to foreign policy events, really changes the whole flavor of this. Now I can say, oh, are you in the, HDA, if you entered into the building, and if you're in the building, then all that crap stuff just works.
But IFIMB is.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's further brainstorming, maybe discussion to be had.
Yeah. I just see that this was just the first trial with this database, so it's
a perfect
and
foundation.
in my experience, you have to work with it, and then you see only then you see the problems.
Yeah.
If you actually, it's very difficult to do a top-down model without practical feedback from. You usually need at least 2 rounds.
Yes.
So that's probably what Microsoft is doing. You always trying something new, and in the second one, then everything is okay. Yeah. So now, for example, Windows 7 was a really beautiful operating system, and Windows 8 has some. But I hope with Windows 8.1 or Windows 9, I think we will have a perfect. So you have to do these cycles, in my experience.
Bringing it back.
Is this taped, everything?
Yes, perfect. That's why we put our endpoint compliance profile out for public review for 60 days.
Yeah.
It's public review now.
Yeah, actually, this suite tags, I think there are not a lot of companies which are using them. I think Adobe and Microsoft. But of course, I see the problem because I have been reading Debian or Ubuntu, the package store, and it's very proprietary, and the Red Hat has a different format, and so you have to use all these adapters. It's more or less the same information. It's just, yeah. Okay, I think we are. Thank you very much for your attendance.